way the church talks about divorce and marriage and everything else, we have three sources. First one is the Bible. The second one is tradition. Third one is the economical council. Okay? However, the point of the debate is to hear what you have to say. So we're going to ask you guys a simple request. And that request is, we all live in the 21st century. We are not back when the Bible was written. So I feel that a lot of you may not agree with a lot of the things that the church says about divorce. So if you agree about what the church says about divorce and conform with it to the very smallest detailed letter, I want you to sit here. If you don't agree to the smallest and detailed letter, I would like you to sit on this side.
And
now,
remember, the theme is speak out. So the whole point is that even if it, like, say what's on your mind, even if it hurts, you know, even if it'll turn heads. The theme is speak out.
Abuna Mikhail promised that he will not judge you if you sit on this side.
Yeah.
So if you feel like you want to sit on this side, please feel free. The best thing to do is that when this meeting is done, we don't want you guys to sit huddled up and to say, you know what, I wanted to say this, but I didn't because I didn't want so-and-so to think this way, or I didn't want Abuna to think this way, or whatever. So if you feel you don't confirm 100%, I see some brave soldiers moving on to this side. If you feel like you don't confirm 100%, stay on this side. If you conform 100%, you're down to the letter. If you're neither,
no,
how do you become neither?
You actually
that means you're over here, so
yeah.
Switch over here. There is no shame in sitting on either side. However, there is shame if you don't say what's on your mind.
The worst we'll do is judge you, really.
Exactly. So,
and talk about you behind your back.
So the church's position on divorce is no divorce unless sexual immorality. So if you feel there is any reason you want to be on this side, you do it.
At the end of the talk, if you happen to switch your mind, then switch sides. So it'll be cool.
Khalas, I can't take this anymore, man. I've had enough. I can't take it.
Lee, what's wrong? It can't be that bad.
It's pretty bad. I cannot put up with this marriage anymore. I'm done.
Listen, Mina, we follow a no exchange, no refund policy in this Coptic Orthodox Church. Once you're married, khalas, you're stuck with her forever.
Let me ask you a question, man. You like to shop. Now imagine you went out, you bought this really nice pair of shoes, but in a few years, your feet outgrew the shoes. Are you going to wear the same shoes even when your toes pop out?
Okay. First of all, I don't think you should compare women to shoes.
Oh, come
okay?
on. Feminist.
Second of all, weren't you guys madly in love? I mean, what happened anyway? Like, I don't get it. You practically worshiped the ground she walked on.
Okay. People change. People change. You're not the same today as you were yesterday. You're not going to be the same tomorrow. And that's it. In short, what's your favorite fruit?
My favorite fruit?
Yeah, what's your favorite fruit?
I don't know, a banana.
Okay, now imagine you went to the store and you found this awesome banana. So you took it home. The beginning, banana's great. Banana's taking care of herself. Banana's always in the fridge. Banana stays in the fridge so long that you want her to leave and get in the car, but she's still in front of the fridge. Banana's awesome. But after a little bit, banana decides, you know, I don't need to stay in the fridge for so long. So banana decides to get out of the fridge. So you feel the banana's, you know, a little bit darker, but still sweet. Okay?
Still edible, right?
Still edible.
Okay.
But after 5 years, man, 5 years outside the fridge, the banana is unedible. It's over.
Okay, listen. I know what you're trying to say.
Exactly.
I get it.
Okay.
But I still don't think it's a reasonable explanation.
It's a reasonable explanation if you think about it. You've changed. If she changed her personality, if her looks aren't the same, if you feel that the person you married isn't the same anymore, why would the church be unfair and make me marry or stay married to somebody who isn't the same person I married in the beginning? That's not fair.
The end.
So what do we think about change in general? Give me an opinion. We hear of a lot of people who get married at a young age, or for whatever reason, their personalities tend to change, or their habits tend to change after marriage. Do you feel it's a valid reason to stick around or to go?
I say tough cookies. Of course she's going to change. Of course you're going to change. She's going to put on a little bit of weight. You're going to... No big deal, you know. That's the way life is. Yeah.
For a change in general, before and after marriage, it's not that the person's changing, it's just you're really getting to know them. Living with someone after marriage is different than, you know, going on dates with them, going to Tim Hortons or whatever it may be. So you're just getting to know them more and getting to know who they are. And as opposed to actually changing, in regards to actually changing, I think it has something to do with both partners, because if a person changes, then it's probably for the benefit or having to do with what the other person is doing or saying or acting in a certain way.
Okay. So that's pretty good.
More opinions? Anybody from this side?
If anything, I thought this side would be more active.
It might not just be like sexual immorality, but say somebody's a chronic gambler and you didn't know that, and you got married to them, and you don't have kids yet. Maybe the husband is abusive. He beats his wife, he beats his children. Actually, I think once children are involved, there should never be divorce, and I'm totally on this side. But before children, if you realize something that you didn't know about this person, and it's a game changer, it's not something that you signed up for, I don't know if it's, you know, if it doesn't really make sense to commit to it for the rest of your life. Children are a bond that, you know, for their sake, you should not get divorced. But if you realize that this person has something that he's hidden from you, and you realize it before there's children, why should you stay together?
Okay, so there's two ideas. The idea of one, hiding. Second thing, you married this awesome person, they turn into a loser a year after you get married, so that is a little bit of change. You don't have kids yet, should you stick around?
Here's the thing. If he turns out to be a chronic gambler and you didn't find out, not say you and it's a he, and you get what I'm saying, right? Like, okay. Then how much research did you actually do before you got married to that person? I mean, like, it's impossible for him to be that good at hiding stuff to the extent that he was able to hide a gambling addiction from you for, let's say, a year or two of engagement, for example. Okay? That's my primary issue.
Most people nowadays get married between average of 25 and 30. If you think you've grown completely by 25 or 30, then you're a little bit naive in that sense. Because most people will change drastically between 25, 30, 30, 40, and more on. So not just gambling or anything. It could be verbal abuse, physical abuse. That might come from stresses in your life that you've never even seen. When you live with somebody, it's completely different than just going out, like somebody said, on dates and things like that. New stresses come in your life that completely change. So you can't really judge that until that happens.
Okay, so that's a good point. Most people are getting married at a young age, right when they finish university or when they started working for 1 or 2 years, so you don't know what's going to happen afterward. The stress of work, the stress of having someone to live with, the stress of having kids after, and how much that's going to bring out.
And that's the kind of stress they never faced before,
the bad
right?
side in you, I guess.
I just want to back up before people get married and whatever and get committed. I think it's a process, and it's not a decision you take lightly, obviously. And so you should be guided through it, and we all know that. In terms of, like, if they do have you're talking about addiction. Addiction is a mental health issue, and it should be taken seriously. It's not like the end of the world, but there are treatments. Your brain is, it's an addiction, so there's changes that happen into your brain, and there is treatment for mental health issues. It's not make it or break it, and you love the person no matter what, right? It's that bond, and there is treatment and there's guidance.
So we can look at change as a change that you can fix, or we can take a look at change in another way. Change that you can work through. Yeah, it's a journey. Okay, good.
I just wanted to say that I totally agree with Michael about change being something that's natural, it's going to happen. But at the same time, I feel like marriage is a bond and it's a commitment, and you make that commitment knowing that this person is still going to grow with you. Obviously, you marry them at 25, they're not going to look the same when they're 45, and what are you going to do about that? You're going to divorce them because they changed the way they look? So change is something that happens and it's natural, and I feel like it's part of the bond and it's part of the commitment. Like, you stood there in front of God, in front of the church, and you made a promise.
I wasn't talking about physical appearance whatsoever. I'm obviously talking about things that are more drastic, and sometimes, like I said, it's you have to understand people are different when you live with them, for sure. And the way somebody can react, like a lot of people go to sexual immorality or physical abuse, but there's a lot of things like mental abuse that people don't even notice. That you could actually be brought down your whole life over years just from what somebody says to you and how they changed you, that you've never seen that to them because you're not living with them on a day-to-day basis. And things like that could wear on both people, what makes both of their lives worse. That could bring offspring that could actually make their lives worse as well. So you have to look at the bigger picture within those first few years of marriage on how compatible you are. Most people don't realize that. I'm not saying you should divorce at that point. It just, I think to have no line at all is not looking at a bigger picture. You have to have some line where this is a point where it's gone too far, or it's not going to work, or this might be worse for both parties.
Okay, agreed with what parts of what you're saying, but here's the thing. The whole idea of change is a double-edged sword, because you as a spouse could change your spouse or direct the change of your spouse into conforming more into your life instead of becoming an abusive alcoholic, for example, okay? Like, you have the choice, or you have the ability in you to change some aspects of your spouse. That's first of all. Second of all, the whole idea of them being abusive towards the spouse, you could get separations for that. It's not divorce, but it will be a separation. You're not going to be allowed to remarry because clearly your capabilities in choosing a spouse are very crummy, but you're just going to be able to not live with someone that's beating you 24/7.
Okay, so last people, Bavli, then Mina. That's it.
We can probably make this a bit more controversial. Last time I checked too, I mean, if we look at the laws of Moses too, God allowed him to allow the Jewish people to give a certificate of divorce to men who have, like, if their spouse is not being good to them. So now I know Jesus said in the New Testament that he reversed that law, but I mean, as it do follow both testaments, both the Old and the New. So.
Okay, so we'll see what the Old Testament is saying, but we'll go on to Mina.
Just a short comment on what Kiro was just saying right now. Like, I get that it's a thought that you could change your spouse for the better, but it just sounds to me that, like, you hear the horror stories of people's, like, broken marriages, and don't you think that people have tried? Like, if it was so easy to change someone, I'm sure people would rather choose that route than like having an entire, like, you know, there's a lot more complications from a divorce than just changing someone for the better. And at the same time, the whole fact that, like, you know, tough cookies, it was your mistake. Just the idea, like, I don't know, like, I see God usually, like, forgives us and has mercy in a lot of other aspects of our life. Like, maybe he doesn't want to punish us for the rest of our life if we made one bad decision.
I think Mina needs to spend the rest of his time over on this side, but in general, I don't think life has a rewind button, so you're kind of stuck with the cross that you carried from the beginning. Rami, last point.
So what we'll do is, I'm just going to say something because I want to, and Pavli, we're going to answer your question because there's another verse in the Old Testament which helps clarify that. We kind of anticipated that. So in terms of change at the age of 25 to 30, 30 and up, why are we assuming it's going to be negative change? I think people usually change for the better. Don't people usually get wiser in life? I hate to believe that they don't. And I agree that it's a really good argument that usually when you're faced with problems that you've never been faced with before, that's when you actually see somebody's true colors. So you can't really see that before the engagement or wedding or whatever. However, there are indicators. So we always have to look out for indicators, and maybe we should have a clear mind, a clear idea as to what indicators we should be looking out for before actually going ahead with these things. So obviously nothing will be black and white, but you have to read between the lines and look out for indicators. So if that's something, an initiative you don't take, once again, take it.
We'll get the next set, and we will answer both of these questions at the end.
Honestly, Miriam, I've been so depressed lately.
Yeah, you haven't been yourself. What's going on with you?
I'm 32, and I don't have a child yet. I mean, it's so depressing. When is this going to happen?
Sally, maybe God has a different plan for you and Mark. I mean, what did the last doctor say to you guys?
He said it's impossible. Mark can't have kids. There's zero chance.
Wow. That must be so horrible for him.
Horrible for him? Horrible for him? What about me? I'm the woman. I'm the one that needs this so bad.
Sally, I know, but I mean, can you imagine how bad he must feel? He must be dying inside knowing that he can't give you children. I mean, have you guys thought about adopting, maybe having a family that way?
I've thought about that, but I mean, the connection between you and your child, it's just, it can't be replaceable.
I know, Sally, but maybe this is just the cross that God wants you to bear.
I'm thinking of leaving Mark.
What? Are you serious?
Ever since I was a little girl, I've always dreamed of raising a family. I've always dreamed of having a child. I'm never going to be happy if this doesn't happen.
Sally, you love him. He's crazy about you. You guys have been together for years. You're actually going to leave him?
I don't love him. Love can only go so far. I mean, after love, all that's left is the need for me to have a child.
Sally, I really think you need to reconsider this. Honestly, this will be the biggest mistake you make. Our church would never allow this.
Then our church is wrong.
You and I both know that our church is not wrong.
Listen, I need a child. Isn't the whole point of marriage to procreate? Doesn't the Bible say that we need to unite and we need to have babies? I mean, it's just, this is insane. In the Old Testament, everyone, I don't understand it. I need to have this child. It's so important to me. You have no idea. The Bible says that we need to do this. I think if the church doesn't allow me to do this, then the church is wrong. The end.
Okay, your turn. What do you guys think?
I think Sally's character is being very selfish on several levels. First of all, you need to get over yourself. Second of all, having a child out of your womb is not the only way of connecting with a child in life. I think you're sort of insulting God's plan, and you're trying to play God by dictating that the only way you can connect to another human being is having this person exit you. And also, I think you're being very selfish in the fact that, oh, it's all about me, it's all about me. Oh, you know, how does he feel? Well, how do I feel? Well, you're not considering your spouse. And I think you're kind of selling out on love. And I think in your problems, you are confusing your emotions and your stress with what true love is. I think hopefully you do love the person because you married him in the first place. And the fact that you think you don't love him anymore, I think that's just taking the lazy way out and just being super selfish. So.
I'm sorry. It's not me. I'm
Guys,
not 32,
don't
by
blame
the
Sally.
way. I'm not.
To her point, when she said, like, her need to have kids, it's like that was her plan all along. Like, she had she didn't really like the smart kid at all. And then she said, oh, no, I want this kid. That's the only thing for me in life is to have this kid. And who cares about everybody else? Like, to her point, like, she's a selfish person. Sorry about that. And, yeah.
You also said something that was kind of, I don't agree with. You said that...
I messed up my line, so...
Oh.
Don't worry.
No, well, you said the whole point of marriage is to procreate.
Yeah, that one was right.
Okay, so that's, well, I don't really think that's right. I think there's two purposes. That's one of them, obviously, procreate. God obviously wants us to have babies and multiply, but he also wants us to have companionship, and he also wants us to have love in our lives. And so that's another purpose for marriage. And so you're totally overlooking that.
I agree.
That's a good purpose, but I think what Sally was wanting to say is the verse says, be fruitful and multiply. So, and it is an instinct in every mother that she wants to have a child of her own. It's an instinct with the father as well, but it's also an instinct with every mother. So I know you guys are a bit too young to feel that now, but I don't know, have you been around people who did not have children? How would you feel about that?
I'm going to say some things that I've heard from like Sunday school servants and stuff. They're not, this is what I've been told. Marriage is for procreation, and if you don't want to have children is different than if you are unable to have children. But either way, procreation is supposed to be like a goal for marriage. Otherwise, there's no need to get married, right? Because then there's no need for sex. But if you are unable to have babies, I've been told that you're allowed to divorce them because you're supposed to have a full family. If you do not want to have babies, a priest could actually tell you to say stop using forms of contraceptives to change this course of the life. So if it's that important to the church, they would actually dictate your choices. Then I think it would be, it's actually like a part of marriage to have children, not to be able to. It's important. So if you are not able to, then that might be different, but adoption is always another option.
So it's a good point that we have. Maybe Abuna can clarify on it after for us, but we have to distinguish between the church's opinion of infertility and inability. Abuna maybe can be able to talk to us more about it after. Bavli would be next.
We all seem to be in agreement that one of the purposes of marriage is procreation. So if you're not procreating, then what's the point of a marriage? Or in this scenario, the idea is that Mark can't, he can't have kids. So if that's the point, then why should Sally be stuck in this marriage where she does want to have kids, and her own kids especially, not necessarily adopt? So I think she does make a good point of wanting to leave him to have her own kids.
I think it's like what Miriam said, is that I have a cross to bear, right? I mean, I'm kind of stuck, right? Maybe it's not God's plan for me to have kids. I think that's what it comes down to.
Has anyone here considered adoption? Like, I mean, it seems like a simple solution. You're making someone's life much better. You're taking care of a child that would otherwise have a miserable life. I think adoption would be the way to go in this case. Go ahead, Mike.
I don't think procreation is the only or one of the main concerns of marriage, because marriage is two people joining together because they want to be together, they love each other, and they're, strong together, like they're one, right? Like, for instance, you can take a vow of celibacy and you don't have to have kids. Like, for instance, Abuna Bishoy Kamel and his wife Tasonia in jail, they were both celibate. They never had children. Yet they loved each other very much. Like, they've cared each other for very much. So, you don't have to, there's no point, you don't have to go the idea of, I'm getting married to procreate. Again, it also has to be when the two parties agree that they are taking the vow of celibacy.
Okay, Mike has an opinion he'll share with us.
I agree with what Antonio's just said, and back to what Bavli said, on your train of logic, then everybody would have to do a test before getting married. That'd be a prerequisite. Because then otherwise, you'd stop it right there and say, sorry, you're not allowed to get married because you can't have kids, which is obviously unfair and wouldn't make any sense for anybody to be put in that position. So I don't know how that would be a prerequisite.
I just want to say a quick thing. So I think that if you're willing to make a commitment to somebody at that point, regardless of whether you know whether or not they'll be able to have kids or not, you're with them through thick and thin. If you made that commitment, you guys are together, and one person is unable to have a child, it's not like, okay, see you later, I want kids, let's move on to the next one. That's not fair. And if you guys weren't ready to make that commitment to begin with, then you shouldn't have gotten married. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, but being realistic, okay, first of all, I think we have to be in that situation to consider it. Second of all, it's not fair for Sally to be getting into a marriage not knowing that she wasn't going to have kids. So I think she should be given that option of trying to get out of it.
Okay, so there's a few things. You go first, and then Polis will go after. So you're talking about you're not going to have an opinion to what to do after, but what if she got tested and she could have kids, and then you ended up being the one who can't have kids? or vice versa, or what if an accident happened after and she can't have kids or you can't have kids? What's the marriage based on? The church kind of talks about if there is a lie in the beginning, then it would allow you for annulment. But how deep does your desire get in the way, and what's God's desire? Go ahead.
I think if it was that important for Sally to have a kid, then she should have told him to have a test if it's gonna make her like leave him, or like if it was that important for her in the beginning, they should have like talked about that and had that conversation.
Like just what you said right now, Shaq, about how the church allows annulment if there was a lie made beforehand about being able to bear children. I just think it's a little bit just funny, like contradictory almost, that we're asked to go into a marriage, completely go in for the relationship, and just, you know, if you, like we were saying, what looks like the outcome of the debate is you enter it, and whether or not you're able to produce kids, that shouldn't be the reason why you're in a relationship. But at the same time, if you find, like, if you were told, like, if you find out later on that you were lied to, then that's still grounds for an annulment. So it just seems like we're treating it
I see where you're coming from, but how can you, it's not necessarily about the actual thing. It's about, right now, you can't trust this person if they lie about something that big.
I understand.
So
If it
with
was
the church, it's the same, it goes the same way if that person had an infectious disease, a terminal disease. If that person had the disease and they don't have that decency to let you know before you get into the marriage, then would the church not allow you for annulment? Church has to be fair.
Yep, I agree. If it was a lie, then that's perfectly fine because that's a trust issue.
Okay.
But it sounds like the church is very specific on what the lie entails, and usually it's about childbearing. I'm not sure if it's everything.
It's other things as well.
It's other things as well, then. Yeah.
Can I just say something small? I just noticed how we talk about, oh, leaving this person or leaving that person so casually. I mean, we're forgetting the fact that they're married. I mean, we're just talking about it so casually. This is a big deal. It's a big deal to leave somebody. I mean, the person that you've dreamt about living your whole life with, the person you fell in love with. We talk about, oh yeah, you can't have kids, labay. Like, we talk about it so casually that I think we have to put things into perspective here, you know? If you really love that person, then you won't leave them casually. It just doesn't make any sense. So for us to just talk about it so casually, it just startled me a little.
I agree with Rami. I'll make one last point, then we're going to move on to the next skit. And the last point is, what Rami's trying to say is that the sacrament of marriage has become a little bit watered down, for lack of a better term. We've been in a culture where we're getting used to dating since grade 4, grade 5, grade 6. And you're going out with a girl, and after 2 weeks you're breaking up with a girl. And you're going out with a girl, and after 2 weeks you're breaking up with a girl. And in that practice, not only are you committing the sin where it's an adulteress or it's whatever. I don't even know how your relationship goes, but the idea behind it is you're practicing marriage and you are practicing divorce. So if you end up getting married at 25 years old, and since you were 8, 9, 10 years old, you've already pretty much know exactly how you're going to practice divorce as well, then when you actually do get married to that person that you love, one day it's going to be very easy for you to get a divorce. We'll go on to the next skit.
Okay, slow down, slow down. So you're trying to tell me that Sally converted to Catholicism and bam, just like that.
You're taking it too lightly. It's really not that simple. I mean, man, Mark is seriously depressed right now.
Oh yeah, I'm sure it sucks for him. But seriously, was it that easy?
Okay, technically, the church law is if someone converts to another sect of Christianity, then you're allowed a divorce.
Well, I'm going to capitalize on this loophole.
It's not supposed to be a loophole. I'm sure there's very good theological reason behind it.
Theological, philosophical, I don't care. I'm going to take advantage of this.
Okay. So you're going to convert just so you could cheat God?
Cheat God? Who said anything about cheating God? He didn't say that. I'm just saying that I'm going to follow church rules. And to top it all, just imagine me and Sally, both Catholics. Can you see the possibilities?
All right, listen, just because you and your wife may be having some difficulties or just because you're bored, whatever reason, it doesn't mean that you should defile the sacrament of marriage. Like, you should talk to like some counselors or talk to a Buna or something.
Don't you think I already tried that? Just let me follow the church rule.
Technically, it's a church rule, but you're...
No buts. It's a church rule. Khalas. I'm going to take advantage of it.
I'm really sad for you if that's what you need to get out of a relationship. You need help more than anything.
Wow, you're talking about this really personally.
My brother, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyone else?
My one point to make is that that's kind of like cheating. And I feel like, okay, you can cheat the church. Maybe you can get a divorce and just convert just to get a divorce or whatever it is, but you can't cheat God. God will know why you did that. God will know your intentions. So if people use that as a loophole, then it's their mistake.
Obviously, in that skit, he wanted to convert because he wanted to get out of it. But in the real world, you know, people do end up converting for whatever reason. So I think it's dependent on the other spouse who hasn't converted if they still want to stick it out with that person if they convert to another sect of Christianity, obviously. But I think it should be fine though if someone's converting.
Sorry, so if Bavli's saying right now, if you're Coptic Orthodox and your wife decides that from now on she's going to go attend the Protestant church or the Catholic church, is that pretty good grounds for you? You know, you cannot stand going to a different church. You want to come to this church every day, and you want to come here with your wife. Do you think that's a good idea to divorce?
It'd be really funny if she played a joke on me and converted to Catholicism too.
Well, the thing is, I've always said it's easier to have the same kind of foundation, and since in an Orthodox family, church means so much to the family itself, to have the two people going to two different churches, it has such a heavy impact on how the relationship would take course later on. I mean, if they split on that and on such a huge matter, what says they won't split on bigger matters later on?
Okay, so the idea here is you have kids, you're worried about your kids, so you decide that you're getting a divorce. Or you don't have kids yet, but you're planning on having kids, and you feel that this is going to cause a lot of tension in your relationship. So is it worth divorcing this person and going with another person? Or does the church actually say that's okay?
Sorry, what was the last part? Does the church say it's okay to have two different parents under, or sorry, a couple
does the church say it's okay that the parents separate?
Well, I think since we have to be the same, like Coptic Orthodox or like Oriental Orthodox to get married in the church, then it would only make sense that they have to stay the same because it's a part of the family as a whole. You can't have a person who's divided both ways, right? It's like following two different ideals, two different beliefs. It's having two separate brains. When you're married, you're supposed to be one person, one brain, one body, one household. If you have kids and you have parents that are two different ideologies, your kids are going to be falling into that. What are they going to do? Do they go to one church? Do they go to the other? Or do they stay home?
Okay, so I agree with you to the letter. However, you are both married, Coptic Orthodox, and then your husband has decided that he will go to the Protestant church, and now do you think that's a good idea to divorce?
No, as long as he lets you do what you want with your kids. If he lets you run the household as an Orthodox household, then he can do what he wants on Sunday mornings?
That's fine, but if you got married to him and he was already Protestant, and you made that decision, well, you can't do that.
You can't get married to him in the church.
But if you made that decision.
But you can't get married to a Protestant in our church, or else it wouldn't be an Orthodox church, and you can divorce all you want because it wouldn't have anything to do with our church's ideals.
He'll be by name. He came to the church and got married in the Orthodox church, but he's originally somewhere else.
All right, so what are you saying? Is that okay if that he doesn't actually believe Orthodoxy? He's just
Is
doing
it
for
after
you?
a few years you're going to be like, I can't take this anymore, should I get a divorce?
I think the thing is, you're going to be having dealt with him as a Protestant or whatever it may be from the beginning.
Okay,
so you kind of know what you're getting into. If he is converting just because of, for your sake, for marriage's sake, from what I've understood, a priest can kind of tell, and they won't actually do the baptism, which means they won't be able to do the marriage. But leaving that aside, so say they do get baptized and you do get married and they start off as Orthodox and then they fall back into their ways. Again, as long as they do it on their own and don't impose it on the rest of the family, I don't think it should matter, because the kids are what's more important, right? As long as I'm Orthodox and my husband will be Protestant by heart or by nature, as long as he doesn't impose that on the rest of my family, because he knows that it's important to me. That's why he would have gotten married in an Orthodox church.
So, okay, I understand that point. We'll let Mike go, then Mina.
I was going to say something else, but on that point there, that's kind of cheating the system, which is kind of like disgracing the sacrament. So that right there, that's kind of unbelievable. The person that actually decided just to do it, just to get married and then go back, that right there defaults the marriage. If one side of the couple doesn't even believe in the sacrament, then that kind of puts a default to it right there. Not logic, like not by terms of the church, but in reality it does. The other point about somebody doing it just to get out of the marriage, if that person is that low to actually do it to get out of the marriage, then you want to get out of that marriage anyway. So.
Okay, so Mina, then Carl.
There's just one thing that I was reading in the Bible that I'm not sure if someone could address it after. But it says in Corinthians pretty much that if a brother marries an unbeliever, they should stay in the marriage. Because just by being in that marriage with a believer, that unbeliever becomes sanctified. So just a question on that.
That's a great point. I was actually about to say the same thing. And I had open. It's 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verse 12. St. Paul just says that even if when there is an unbeliever, I'll just read it. But to the rest I, not the Lord, say, if any brother has a wife who does not believe and she is willing to live with him, let him not divorce her.
Just remember this verse was said at the beginning of the church, where all the people there were Gentiles. And St. Paul meant that if a husband converted to Christianity, then his wife, if she is not a believer yet, she can stay with him.
I don't think we're that far off from, like, I know times have changed, but I think it's still the same fact now. There are still a lot of agnostics out there. There's still a lot of people who maybe have thought they made up their mind, but maybe if they stick around it long enough, they'll change their mind back. So, I don't know. I don't think it's changed that much.
Sorry, actually I think it has changed because it's 2011 years later, first of all. And second of all, we're now living in 2011, almost 2012, where Christianity has reached every single point in corner of the world, although it's a globe. But anyway, so yeah, no, I think you can't play that. And what happens if they change to Islam, then what?
So I see what Parth is saying, but at the same time, there is people converting over to Christianity. So what if the husband converts and the wife doesn't convert? Should the husband leave the wife?
And I think in that case, that verse would be valid, because then Christianity is not a home wrecker. That's what the verse is basically trying to say. If you already have something going on in your home and Christ comes into the picture, he's not coming in to ruin. Okay?
The idea that Christianity has been preached to the whole world, I don't really, I think people understand what Christianity is as a religion or as a philosophy, but I think proper Christianity, actually living in a Christ-like manner, in a way that people actually want to see Christian and want to, be opened up to the idea of Christianity, hasn't been preached at all to, anyone, really. So, look at how often Christianity is portrayed negatively. Okay. They haven't experienced Christianity, they've just experienced the negative side of what some people abuse Christianity to be. So I don't think it's been preached to the whole world.
So it's a valid point, but it's a topic we'll discuss on another debate. One last point on this debate, and then we want to hear your opinion about anything else that you may think would qualify for divorce. Anything else, any idea. We don't care how awkward, how crazy your opinion is. It's better that you tell us now than you go with your buddies afterwards and you discuss it, because guess what? They're not going to have answers. But we have answers now.
I just wanted to ask a question because it's kind of not making sense. How do we say that, in the beginning we said that, what is it called? The Bible says what it says, and just because time has changed, it doesn't mean that we ignore it. But then in that last point, you're saying that, oh no, times have changed, so we can kind of bypass that rule.
We're not trying to say time that changed. We're saying the situation changed. What Parthenia was trying to say, I guess, is that during that time people didn't know about Christianity. And we talked about that the verse didn't talk about knowing about their religion. It talked more about God is not a homewrecker, so he's not going to come in between two people that are married and separate them. If one of them decides to convert to Christianity, he's allowing for that to still stay. However, if life does become unbearable, then at that time, he didn't want, if a guy is married to a lady, they're both Muslim, and then the lady decides that she's going to convert to Christianity, he decides he's going to kill her. There's a little bit of leeway.
So yeah, it's important to understand the context
of the verse.
that you want to say.
We are not trying to change anything here, Yamina. What we're saying that St. Paul, as a disciple of the Lord Jesus Christ, he knows that the only way for a divorce between Christians is if there is sexual immorality in there, adultery. So if he, in this case in particular, talking about a way of a divorce, but not actually a divorce, he's talking about if couple were both unbelievers and then one of them became a believer. We're talking about an era of history that at the time of the church, at the beginning of the church, Corinthians, this is the epistle to the Corinthians. Corinthians were all Gentiles. And this was at the beginning of establishing the church of the Corinthians. And they needed so many advices at that time. Someone accepted Christ, but the other party didn't accept him yet. What's the situation? They asked him this question, what we are supposed to do? Are we supposed to divorce? He said no, because the other party will be sanctified through the one who believed. Why? Because Christ became the head of the family. So the other party became sanctified, the other non-believer party became sanctified because one of them believed in Christ. So this was extremely merciful. Why? Because there is an opportunity for the other party who didn't believe yet is to believe and to know Christ through who knew Christ first. But if the other party, the other person said, no, I don't like to be married to a Christian, or I don't like to see my husband or my wife converted to Christianity, in that case, it's allowed for him or her to leave. So I cannot come and take the same case today. Why? Because it's not there today. It's not there today. How? If a Christian person cannot get married to anyone except for a Christian person. So the case is not valid for today. But they give here a hint, if two are not Christians and one of them converted to Christianity, then the other one has the right either to stay or to leave. And the church will allow this to happen. Thank you.
Okay, so I think that's a good wrap up to this part. We want to hear your opinion. What do you think are other valid reasons why things won't work out?
I don't have a valid reason, but I have a question. Am I okay?
You can ask it.
Okay, so my question is, say that there's a couple and for whatever reason, let's just say like the girl decides that she can't do it anymore, she doesn't want to live with this guy for whatever it is, and it's a reason that the church doesn't agree with, and she says, forget this, I'm getting a divorce. So she gets one like according to the law, which isn't really valid according to the church, but what ends up happening is a lot of times, like priests and stuff in our church will say, okay, well, you did this, you obviously can't remarry because you're still technically married in our church. And at the same time, they also say, like, you're not really allowed to take communion anymore or for a certain amount of time because of what they did or what she did.
You're saying that about the party that did not commit the divorce.
I'm talking about the girl who wanted to do it on purpose. I'm talking about the girl who wanted to have the divorce. I'm not even talking about the guy at all.
Okay.
So what I wanted to ask is, like, I know obviously this is wrong and it's a sin and it's like a disgrace to the sacrament and they made a promise to God and all that stuff, but why are we preventing somebody from taking communion if we don't prevent people who commit murder and people who commit other really horrible sins from taking communion? That's my question.
Okay, I think that's a question for Abuna.
Okay, in order to take communion, you have to repent first. So repentance needs someone to regret what he had done and to fix the mistake that he did. So in this case, if she did all these processes to get divorced and she filled the papers and everything, she had to go back and reconcile with her husband and go back and, cancel this divorce action. In the case of murder, if someone killed someone and he wants to take communion, he has to repent and he has to confess. And he has actually, I remember one of the stories about Abuna Mikhail Ibrahim. He had someone in confession with him and he confessed to him that he murdered someone. So he said to him, I'm not going to give you absolution until you go and confess your crime in front of the police in order for me to give you absolution for you to take communion. And this is what he did. And he ended actually to be, for the capital punishment, but he gained his eternal life. Right? So for any sin, in order to be forgiven, in order to go to and partake from the Holy Communion, we need to repent first. So for her, in order to be able to partake from the Holy Communion, she needs to fix what she did.
So I think that really sums up the question. Do we have any other things that we can talk about divorce?
What if you're in a really abusive marriage and say the person's an alcoholic or a gambler and you do have children? Then I know you said it's your cross to carry, but why should it be your child's cross to carry?
I think, Mariana and Abuna, correct me if I'm wrong, in these cases the church allows a separation but not a divorce. Is that correct?
Okay, if there is a problem or abusive actions from one of the parties and they went to the priest many times and they failed to fix the problem between the two partners, the Bible tells us here that they can be separated but not divorced. It means that they will not be able to remarry again, but they can be separated for the benefit of the children. Okay, if there is no hope, and actually during this separation time, the church still prays for them, and the church still do all the efforts to get them back together. But if being together will be harmful for the kids it needs to be actually judged case by case by the priest and by the bishop in order to allow them to be separated.
What I want to understand about that, Abuna, is what's the point? If they're going to be separate and they're not going to be living together and they're going to be apart, what's the point of keeping the marriage? Is it just to keep the sacrament going and to honor the sacrament?
Because actually,
or is there some kind of other reason? I'm just trying to, I don't understand.
Because they got married in the church, it means that they became one. And for them, as being one, they are not allowed to join any other body. You know, they are connected together in a holy relationship. Now they are separated by body, by physically. Yeah, it's to honor the sacrament, exactly.
There was another reason that I think in one of the marriage counseling lectures we had, Abuna Ruiz was saying that sometimes the priest would advise the lady or the guy in that abusive relationship to try to stick it out in that relationship, because sometimes the other partner, whoever, he's an alcoholic, he's a gambler, he's just abusive, whatever his problem is or whatever her problem is, when they see the good person in the relationship or the person who's struggling with them in the relationship, praying for them, putting up with their stuff. He even went to an extreme case where the lady actually had the right to divorce because the man was cheating on her. So that was sexual immorality, and she stuck it out with him for the sake of her kids, that eventually the man felt shamed of himself, and he repented and confessed and came back to God and came back to his family. So sometimes Abuna says, like, they have to kind of keep pushing through that relationship because sometimes it fixes itself, or the players in the relationship, whether the priests or the bishops or the people in the relationship praying for it, actually help it to get better. Any other topics, guys? Jackie.
So getting back to the same point of whether the individual is allowed a divorce, which they're not, it's separation. If they're being abused in the case, I personally disagree with it. I think that the person should be able to have a divorce in that case, because I know that it's a case-by-case basis and a priest will talk to you and try to counsel you through it, but at the same time, being abused is not an easy situation. It's not one where, you know, your spouse may see that you're continuing to go to church and be Christ-like and they're just going to stop abusing. People who have the tendency to abuse are just like that, and they're very manipulative, and they apologize, and they can go back and do it over and over again. And that person can always find grace with God or the church or the priest with other people, but I think it's really irresponsible to counsel someone to stay in a relationship where they're putting their own life at risk and possibly their children's life at risk. And in terms of a separation, yes, they could get a separation if the divorce, like if the situation's really bad and they are being abused, but I just don't see a consistency where sometimes you're allowed a separation and sometimes you're allowed a divorce, when, like Abuna's response was, the whole point is you want to respect the sacrament. Well, how about if the person cheated on you? Don't you also want to respect the sacrament? But no, for some reason...
At that point, a divorce was already made. That was a point that Uncle Agdi was saying. Once a person gets in between the two that became one, that automatically creates a divorce. The sacrament was already broken.
Yeah, so there's two things. Once one person comes between two people, you're no longer one. There's another person between you. The sacrament is broken. So that's the idea of cheating. The second idea is, when I was saying it's a case-by-case type of relationship. There's different forms and different things that you have in terms of abuse. There's obviously very low tolerance when it comes to physical abuse or somebody who's going to be harmed, compared to verbal abuse, compared to...
He snores at night, for example.
Compared to ignorance of the relationship or of the marriage. They're all forms of abuse. So that's why things have to get measured case by case by people who have, let's say, a lot more experience than we do.
So the argument is that if there's infidelity, a person has come between the two that are one and made them no longer one, so the divorce has already happened. But to imply that the only thing that can come between two people is sexual immorality is to imply that the only thing that makes two people one is the physical bond. They're one on so many other levels, and then by the same token, a bunch of other things can come between them and separate them and cause a divorce.
But we were saying that if someone would cheat on other, then already the adultery had happened, and if the wife knew or the husband knew, whoever, then he has all or she has all the right to go and ask for a divorce, and the church, after investigations, they will grant her or him the divorce. Because what Kira was trying to say, that adultery in itself is a divorce. Why? Because husband and wife, when they get married, they become one. And then you get a third body, and you get it in between them. So you separate them.
So yes, you separate the physical oneness.
You separate the marriage. You void the marriage. It's over. Because of one of them committed adultery, got into a physical relationship with other party.